All right, so got some things in the way here. Wasn't isn't isn't working as planned. I had my secondary computer here up on a platform. It just fell over just as I was getting started. So try to make a transition here and move, and kind of fell into everything. So we've got a lot of great things to talk about today. Um, and anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed the short slideshow. Wanted to put that up. Uh, trying to get ready, realized that the audio wasn't connected properly. The video, shoot, there's no audio. Look at this. All right. I've been having a little bit of a technical glitch. Um, I just realized that I was unplugged so I'm gonna go. This is really bad. So can you hear me now? You probably couldn't hear me before, losing some of the viewers that have popped in. This is kind of frustrating because my cable is now stuck someplace and I can't figure out where it's stuck. It's jammed up. Anyhow, so I'll just have to roll with it the way it is. It looks like it might be coming through too loud. I can't tell. Oh, and you could always hear me? Test, test. That's weird. It was unplugged. So I don't know what happened. Um, should be working fine. Anyhow, it looks like the volume's coming through on this side. Let me just make a quick transition here. Hang on. All right, I'm back. Here we go. Let's try to kick this off one more time. Kind of technical issues. The Yeah, it might have been the computer microphone right off the bat, but I don't know. Let me see. Hello, hello. Yeah, it's definitely this mic. So anyhow, now that I've lost everybody that was in the stream before, we'll try to make this work efficiently and everything else, all that other good stuff. So let's try to take it from the top, and in the playback, we'll try to edit all this stuff out. So anyhow, there are a number of things that I wanted to talk about today, a number of things that I wanted to cover today. Primarily, I want to focus on what banks are doing about cryptocurrency. I want to talk about satellites, how satellites are being put onto the blockchain. I want to talk about automotive and exactly how automotive is incorporating blockchain. And then we also want to then focus in on what China is doing about taking over blockchain and the cryptocurrency space, and what can the rest of the world do about it. I don't know. That's what we're going to find out about right here on the chain. All right. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that little intro. So I want to start off with something right off the bat that I thought it came up. This was announced back in April. It was and I thought that it was launched. And this is the Nasdaq Liquid Index. I'm gonna have to make a quick transition here, and we're gonna fade over to this because I want to take a look at what's going on here with the Ripple XRP Liquid Index up here on Yahoo Finance that is actually coming real-time price from NASDAQ. And it's interesting because I was looking into it. I wanted to figure out exactly how Yahoo is pulling, or NASDAQ was pulling together this index. Where are they getting the pricing from? And they're looking at a basket of exchanges, and they're only looking at the top exchanges. Now, back in April when it was reported that they're rolling all of this out, one of them was Poloniex. Poloniex is now pulling out of the U.S. market. Not sure if that's going to impact, which ones they're using. At that point, they were just getting ready to also incorporate Coinbase into the counting, but they're looking at multiple aspects of the pricing, and they want to maintain, as consistent and close to accurate as possible. So it's not just being pulled off of one exchange, but a basket of exchanges. So I thought that was important. It's also very important that when we start seeing these indexes starting to hit mainstream. So here we have it hitting Yahoo Finance, but obviously it's being, this was put together through NASDAQ. We also saw just the other day when Mark Zuckerberg was pulled in front of Congress that Ted Budd, Representative Ted Budd, had mentioned three primary digital assets in comparison, and it was an interesting statement because he brought up Libra, and he said, but it's different than real cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP. And I think that this transitional point that we're in right now is really interesting, and we're starting to see the groundwork being prepared for mainstream adoption. Main Street, they're little by little need to educate Main Street into what digital asset is, into what a cryptocurrency is, what's the differentiator, what is blockchain technology, how can people begin to become accustomed to digital currency, being more comfortable with seeing it around, seeing this transitional point of replacing fiat. And it's not just credit card now. Everyone's used to paying with credit cards, everything. So you can make the argument that we're already in this digital economy. However, making this big leap transition now over into digital currency, it's different. From a consumer's perspective, it shouldn't be that different. If I go and pay with my credit card, what does it really matter, what's happening in the background in terms of transactional and all the processes that are going on? It really shouldn't from a consumer perspective. What's important, though, from a consumer perspective is that it's being done transparently, effectively. It's being done cheaper so that there's less cost involved. And it's interesting, too, because as you bring this up, we talk about cost, involvement in transaction, and all of this is really relevant, when we look at things like this. But I think, it's really interesting because right now, if you look at what American Express is doing, if you look at the way American Express typically charges, and credit cards in general are charging. So there's obviously a lot of free credit cards out there, but we're starting to see, some sort of a transition, away from the free credit card, just like we saw a transition away from free banking back to, cost to bank, back to free banking again. But now you're starting to see a ramp up on the cost of actually holding a credit card. So one of those credit cards being American Express, which I've carried for years and years and years. And they obviously, a lot of these credit cards offer some amazing incentives to actually use the credit card. But American Express across the board is increasing the cost just to have the right to hold the card. And so their most basic card, I believe, is now going up to $150 per year. If you want to get, if you have their gold card, I think is like $250 per year at this point. And then their platinum card, if you want to hold the platinum, is already up to $550. And it's interesting because in a time period where you see a lot of focus from the digital currency side, on the digital asset side, of cost containment, and trying to make and support a world where it could be more inclusive. Then you have credit cards that are vying for, a certain space, that are competing for, individuals and giving out rewards, but yet they're increasing the cost to be part of that membership. And so, are we going to see, similar types of things keep occurring within the digital asset space, or is the digital asset space now, as it becomes more impactful from a transactional perspective, is that just going to decrease then the cost of transaction for these organizations, so they're also able to ramp up more profit, yet they're still going to charge, from a consumer perspective, charge them more. Who knows? We'll see what happens here. Hey, AJ is now here, so we can wrap it up. So let me just take a brief moment and just acknowledge people that have bounced into the chat. We had about 8 minutes of back and forth here with a live slideshow from Switzerland. I just put in a few images there. But we got Ahmed Ali is in the chat with us today. We got Tony Favel, Stephen Ship. I believe Stephen Ship, you were the first one in. Let's see, we've got, who else is chatting here? I saw a few people. We got Blockchain Monkeys. By the way, if you guys haven't checked it out yet, go to onthechain.io, and check out what we're putting together over there. You'll notice that we have 2 YouTube channels. We're posting on Cinnamon. We're posting up on Coil. We're getting ready to roll out podcasts. There's a little bit more technical involvement with rolling out the podcast, rolling out the written blog. There's a lot of other great things that we're putting together on onthechain.io, and that really is all about however people want to consume content, whether you want to watch it, whether you want to listen to it, and whether or not you want to read it. That's going to be put up on the chain. So let's see, we've got Ollie G bounced in here, David D running a little bit late. We got Flooring Guy in here. I just mentioned Blockchain Monkeys. I want to bring him up because he recently posted his very first video on the chain, and it was a VeChain video. If any of you guys are into VeChain, go check it out. It's on our other YouTube channel. This YouTube channel, On the Chain Live, is reserved strictly for live streams, and any video interviews that we premiere will be on this channel. All the shorter videos are on the chain, so go check that out. Let's see. So, and then we got Ajax in here. I mentioned that. So those are the ones that are participating in the chat. There are others that are watching that aren't yet participating. Just a quick acknowledgement. If you're new to the channel, you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit subscribe. Hit the thumbs up, if you're enjoying the content, and hit the bell notification notifier if you want to make sure that you get updated every time we post some new content to this channel. Do it on the other channel as well. We did rebrand the channel, so I know that a lot of people have asked me and said, hey, you know what, it's very difficult. We type in On the Chain into YouTube and the algorithm has yet to pick up. So this channel was originally the HODL Review. If you type that in, hopefully we're about a month in now, so hopefully all the algorithms over at Google are changing. Same thing with On the Chain. If you type in On the Chain XRP, it comes up because it used to be XRP Minute. So anyhow, that's just a little shameless plug about On the Chain and everything else that we're doing that's good. Let's see, we got Mike G, we got Dansky, and we are going to talk about China. And why do we want to talk about China? Mainly because the United States government, we saw another debacle this past week when they dragged Mark Zuckerberg in front of Congress. Now, others have talked about this. It was the opportunity. Financial Services Committee and congressional representatives that sit on the Financial Services Committee, it was an opportunity for them to question Mark Zuckerberg on Libra and Calibra and ask him more in-depth questions about blockchain technology. Ask him more questions about, how Facebook is going to manage their centralized theme when they're going to now also be supporting the Calibra and Libra, the Libra organization. Is there going to be a conflict between their centralized platform and trying to create a decentralized platform for a cryptocurrency? And then, as I mentioned earlier, Ted Budd had did a comparison and said, well, Libra is not really a cryptocurrency like these others. But then you have other members of Congress that embarrassed the United States in front of the entire world, that stooped to the ultimate of lows, the lowest of the lows, and utilized this platform. The reason they brought Mark Zuckerberg in front of Congress was to talk about cryptocurrency, blockchain, and Libra. And what did they do? They used the platform and they used their time to question him on things that are completely unrelated to digital asset, to finances. Now, they're sitting on the Financial Services Committee. They need to talk about finances and the economy and currency. How about that? Why don't they talk about the U.S. dollar? How about they talk about the U.S. role in the world economy? How about they talk about the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency? How about they actually ask Mark Zuckerberg about Libra? So while Congress is drifting off into La La Land, and they've been on the 3-year mission of some, ridiculous impeachment hearings, regardless of what you guys think of Donald Trump. I know I have people here from all over the world that listen in, and people from different ends of the political spectrum. But when you have 3 years of false narrative being promoted, whether it's through the mainstream media or through our Congress, that is just demeaning what America is in front of the entire world and bringing us to the ultimate of lows, when the rest of the world is actually playing to win, the United States is, who knows what they're doing. They're playing hopscotch or marbles out in the backyard. I don't know what they're doing. I brought this up before, but China, this is the president of China, President Xi, urges accelerated blockchain technology adoption. Now, he didn't say digital asset adoption. He didn't say cryptocurrency adoption. He's talking about blockchain technology adoption. And this is so vitally important to see this kind of language coming out of the president of China. Now, let me bring this up here so you guys can see it too. This was on Cointelegraph. It's been reported in multiple locations. This one was posted yesterday. The statement was on the 24th. And check this out. So this is, again, he's calling for the country to accelerate its adoption of blockchain technologies. Why? Because China gets it. China is attempting, and right now there's a battle going on, as there's always a battle in the world for supremacy over technology. Back in the heyday, in the 80s, when Japan was skyrocketing in electronic technology and the U.S. was losing steam. Then in the late 80s, then you saw a battle between Japanese steel over U.S. steel. Then you fast forward a little bit into the 90s. All of a sudden, you have the high tech boom. But during the electronic boom, you had the software ramp up. Then you had the battle with supremacy there, and obviously the U.S. was winning with Microsoft and Apple. There was there was a turmoil and struggle there, and with IBM and mainframe and all these different components competing against each other. And then again, from an international perspective, you started seeing Japan ramp up. Then the Japanese were buying up real estate like crazy over in the United States in the 80s. And then we go into this transition into the early 90s, and we start seeing technology starting to pick up, going to the mid to late 90s. All of a sudden, again, you have this technology boom in the internet, and the internet comes into being, and the U.S. is leading the way, paving the way, not to demean any other country in the world, but the U.S. was paving the way, and this was the epicenter. And so now you fast forward till today, for the past 9 years of development, and the U.S., who knows if we have no idea where Bitcoin was originated from, or who the Satoshi is, what country Satoshi is from, if it's a conglomerate, who knows what it is. But the thing is that technology started ramping up. Technology started building up in the U.S. Technology started building up all over the world. And it's amazing because this is really one of the first times in history when it comes to technology that any part of the world can lead in this technology, developing into the digital asset space. We're seeing amazing technology, coming out of everywhere, and we're seeing adoption, and we're seeing smaller countries that get the fact that they can now have a huge impact on the movement of global economy, and they have an opportunity and an incentive right now to join the world economy, and to scale. So they're not going to be playing catch up. They're going to be right in the mix. And so when you see some of these smaller countries over, like we talked about Bermuda, you have the Bahamas, you have the Marshall Islands, you have countries like Malta, Singapore, Thailand. You see Switzerland taking a huge step forward when it comes to clarity in the blockchain digital asset space, and wanting to incentivize and push companies into adopting blockchain. Now, when I talked about Bermuda, the Bahamas, and Marshall Islands, their intent is actually to incorporate digital asset and cryptocurrency into their day-to-day, into real-life utility. The Marshall Islands to get away from the reliance on the U.S. dollar. The Bahamas to really stabilize their economy and decrease reliance on fiat. And then you have Bermuda that wants to be the greatest sandbox test case in history by moving everything over. Dubai, which has really been a leader, for a number of years in bringing the world leaders of business and technology into Dubai as a kind of playground and business epicenter in the Middle East. Dubai has stated that they are going to become all blockchain. So they're moving in that direction. Saudi Arabia is moving into technology. All these countries are moving forward rapidly. India, for years and years and years, has been in development mode. Right now, they're on track for 7% per capita gain in their GDP going into, I believe, expectation for 2020. Those are huge numbers. China used to be on par with that 7 to 9% growth, per year. Obviously, China has some issues. The U.S. and China are in a dispute over trade and all of this other stuff. So there's a lot of unfair practice that goes on in much of the world. But regardless of all of that, our goal here today and on these channels is to focus in on what's going on in the blockchain space. And this is really, really interesting because although China has all but outlawed cryptocurrency, and they even push it here, but they want to push for blockchain adoption. And so here, this article really hits a lot of these primary points. But here we have, digital currency arms race. Unsurprisingly, the one cryptocurrency that the Chinese government doesn't seem to have an issue with is its proposed central bank digital currency. So yes, they don't want competition. Now we have to look at China from a perspective of, what they're doing is important. We have to understand what their intent is from a blockchain perspective, from a technology perspective. Now, a few videos ago, we also talked about what is the overall potential of control of governments over individuals' spending habits when things move into a blockchain environment, into a digital currency environment. And we pulled up an article before about Canada wanting to move into these digital currencies in order to track the spending habits of Canadians. And if you can track the spending habits of Canadians, you can make sure that they're being honest about their tax liability. So same thing in a country like China. Now, China the reason why it's so interesting. It's a communist country that a number of years ago, and I spent a lot of years researching and writing papers about China, specifically years ago when I was in graduate school, and specifically about the growth of the Chinese economy at that time. And it's so interesting because there you had a dual economy that was growing up in China. You had a communist, centralized, controlled economy by the state, and then you saw the identification within China that if they were to compete on a global stage, that they had to unleash the capitalistic economy and grow business. And if they grew business, that meant they had to allow people to become wealthy. If they allowed people to become wealthy, that means that those people were going to employ more Chinese. If they were employing more Chinese, that meant that there were going to be more and more indigenous businesses, global businesses growing up in China that could then also demand respect on a global scale. And so there were a lot of moving pieces to China moving into this capitalist form of economy. And as they were moving into this capitalist form of economy, the communist political structure would pull back every so often. And so now, and obviously we're seeing even in Hong Kong, you see that's a perfect example of the centralized communist mentality trying to push and put large pressure on a largely capitalist economy, which was in Hong Kong, which they had taken over a number of years back. I don't remember the exact year of the transition from the British back into the hands of the Chinese, but there were a lot of rules, with that. So it's really, really interesting. DNI, what's up, man? I'm glad that you bounced in here. So really, really interesting. Great statement there too. Let's see, communist government, capitalist economy, the protectionism advantages of communism, and the economic growth advantages of capitalism. That's how they kind of see that within that framework. Whereas, obviously there was so much tension, and so you see that all the time because they have to allow people to have freedom of movement, but the government in a communist nature doesn't want people to have freedom of movement. Look at it over years. So there's always this tension and turmoil going on. So from a political perspective, the Chinese still lack freedom. Just like you look at with digital asset, they want to shut it down. You're going to jail. You look at what happened. Look at North Korea as a dictatorial regime that was brought in through communism. Complete control, and that's how China used to be as well. But you have this dual economy or dual political infrastructure, and it's really interesting. But to digress from all of that, it's so important to understand what China is doing, because China that has repressed or all the other digital asset to the point where it has become criminal, and you'll suffer the consequence if they catch you. But they're okay with the blockchain technology because they understand where the future is going, but they also understand that their centralized digital currency, although it's going to be in a blockchain environment, it allows them more oversight and more control over what the people are doing, their spending habits and all of that. Now, China moved to a digital currency. They've been in that mode for a very long time, moving away from fiat, just as India about over a year ago, India made a huge move, where they outlawed the cryptocurrency exchanges, really, suppressed any potential of that country moving into blockchain. And India should have been involved in this blockchain and innovative cryptocurrency growth for the past year and a half. But the government over there, which is, again, they're focused in growth, but they're also heavily corrupt from many different levels over in India. And so there's a lot going on between who controls what, their central bank versus the government and the population. And, so there's all this oversight management. But this was like a year plus ago where they removed about 70% of the fiat currency out of the market, and they're trying to push people also into a banking, digital type of economy without blockchain. So now you're seeing again China being able to incorporate what this all what this means. And to me that it's so relevant. We have to look at the bigger picture of everything. There's all these moving pieces around the world, and so here you have China, the president. It's so important that he's saying that they're embracing blockchain technology. We know where they're moving. Now, go back to what happened in Congress with Mark Zuckerberg. I know I've spent 25, 30 minutes speaking about this, and I just planned on saying, hey, check out what China's doing, and we'll move on. But Mark Zuckerberg had a very important statement that he made in regards to Facebook, or not Facebook, but Libra being the only one that could really combat what China is about to do, taking over the blockchain payment space to a wide extent. And maybe that's China's intent, maybe it's not. Maybe Libra can do it, maybe it can't. I disagree with Mark Zuckerberg stating that Libra is the only mechanism that can do that. There are other platforms that definitely have the capability of taking on a behemoth like that, because we see obviously one of the big ones is one of the big ones is RippleNet. With what Ripple's doing, taking on Swift, and they've been bringing in customer after customer after customer, getting involved. We see what MoneyGram is doing. It takes a lot of time to ramp up and take on an organization of over 10,000 banking customers, and that's been around since the early 70s. And so here you have RippleNet taking them on. Now that's in the cross-border payment transactional space. There's so much more that could be done, but all of these things that are happening right now are so key. We have to key in on everything. What China's statement is. China is moving into a direction where they would love to be in a position where their digital yuan could be a reserve currency, that could be a trade currency. They want to be able to stabilize their currency. Right now, their yuan isn't stable. If you don't have stability in currency, nobody's going to want to use it to trade. The Indian rupee isn't stable, so it makes it very ineffective as a trade currency because the valuation is always changing from an international perspective. The euro was always relatively stable. The dollar always relatively stable from a global perspective. The yen always relatively stable, even though there's fluctuation. The pound, the sterling, so there's all these other currencies that are used in trade, but China wants to elevate their status to become one of, to see other countries utilizing their digital yuan from a trade perspective. And so we have to really see what's happening as they move. Now, all of that's also important because, again, what we see at the U.S. Congress level, when there should be leadership involved, from Congress, instead, they're playing games. The Financial Services Committee, to just backtrack on that for 1 second, needs to be actively involved in promoting the finances and the economy of the United States of America. They shouldn't be over there, debating other issue. When you're on the Financial Services Committee, which is one of the most important committees in Congress, and you don't utilize your time for finances, they should have your microphone shut off immediately. And, the person at the gavel should say, out of order, we're not here to talk about XYZ. That's a completely different forum. That's a different committee. And if you want to bring Mark Zuckerberg in front of that committee, with all due respect, bring him in front of that committee. They're wasting taxpayer dollars. It's embarrassing. We pay their salaries. We pay not just their salaries, but their pensions, their health care. We're paying every aspect of what those congressional representatives are doing in Washington, and they're doing nothing but embarrassing us on a global stage. So that's enough of that. Let's move on from there. Sorry to rant on stuff like this, but when I see, when you see what's really happening in the world, and you start looking and say, hey, there's all these other amazing things that are going on, and then you say, hey, this is ridiculous. So I apologize if there's any ads up here that are popping up. I don't know what the heck this is. Let's get rid of that. So this was an article came out a couple days ago on Thursday, and I think this is an interesting transitional point. With all these things that we're talking about. David D, that would be okay if a crazy woman didn't control the gavel or gravel, as Mnuchin called it in frustration. That's hilarious. Let me check some of these comments because I think there's some great comments here. DNI, the more success digital assets achieve, the more we all give up in our own financial privacy. Unfortunately, that's something. Yeah, everyone should definitely be concerned about. Um, uh, let's see. David D. I had to go back up to this one. Don't speak with truth and facts. You're about to unwind almost 2 years of many of the other XRP YouTubers hyping conspiracy theories. You've gone rogue. I have gone rogue. I don't know what. I don't know. I should change it. Should be just rogue. That'll be it. We'll change the name of the channel again. Um, let's see here. David D then said the idea of Libra will be an important watershed moment and key entry on the timeline when people write about history of change of the financial system. Like it or not, Libra is accelerating the conversation that they are 100%. So important. There's so much going on here. Dansky also brought up a idea here that since the FATF guidelines were adopted, privacy coins have a limited life expectancy. They definitely do it. That Texas XRP appreciate that feedback. Also, always good to see Spanish Fly popping in to the conversation. And then I realized I'm getting a little dashboard thing so I can make these transitions over on my dashboard, and instead of having to constantly do this, and then you guys see that, and then we go over here. So this article, fintech's fast pass to traditional banking is now cut off. There's some changes that are happening within the SEC, within government, within banking allowance. We're starting to see some backtrack. Jeff's Rogue Roundup. We've started to see 3 monitors. I've got 2 monitors on my regular computer. I've always thought about adding a third, but in this studio environment that I have to run off this laptop, and I've got limited space, and I've got to set it up a little different. But anyhow, so from a banking perspective, we're starting to see, changes. We've seen a number of exchanges that are moving out of the U.S., that are pulling out of certain areas. And so a lot of this emphasis you see coming out of New York, because New York, really seems to control a lot. But a lot of these fintech startups were almost fast-tracked to getting banking permission. And so now they've been pulling back on that. So this is interesting. The fintech charter looked to expedite the process by allowing a startup to offer lending or payment products without having to accept FDIC insurance or comply with banking regulations by state. So this is really important that they're trying to change how they're granting, and this went to court. So there's definitely some changes that are happening in this space. Now the question is, this is fintech, doesn't necessarily have to do with cryptocurrency or digital asset specific. You have groups like Robinhood and others that are really able to take advantage of what this meant to be fast tracked. Is FDIC insurance mandated? Are they going to make sure that it's mandated? How are they going to get it? Different companies like here, Vero Money, a mobile-only banking startup. So what we're starting to really see here is this. You're starting to see some interaction between the growth of fintech space, new banking, digital banking, online banking only. Ing was an example of it years ago. Capital One was an example of it until they started opening up coffee shops. There's a lot of conflict going on a global stage like we talked about. There's also a lot of change and conflict going on between the brick and mortars and the fintech. So from the brick and mortar banking. And the reason why digital asset factors into all of this is because you have Binance US, you have Coinbase Pro, but Coinbase trying to move into banking and lending and all of that stuff. Binance US, which is also going to be moving into that same position. You see what Coinfield is doing up in Canada. You see with their tokenization through Sologenic in Canada and other parts of the world, not in the US. But then you see like Gemini. Brick and mortar banks are getting competition coming at them from all different angles. And that's really important to understand, that when you see things happening within government and you see pullbacks, that these brick and mortars have strong lobbyists, that the new fintechs and the blockchains are just gaining momentum in the lobby sector. But yet these blockchain companies, digital asset exchanges, are worth billions. They're bringing in huge amounts of money. You see how much money Coinbase brought in a short period of time. They're going to be on par with some of the mid-sized banks, soon with some of the large banks, and start in terms of disposable money to do things with. Brick and mortars understand what's happening. They're fighting for their legitimacy and their validity in this new marketplace. And they're not going away. Banking in general isn't going away. Brick and mortars might go away. We are quickly approaching a time where brick and mortars relevancy in the space as we understand them isn't so relevant anymore. We still need to meet with people. We still need to see people. Capital One kind of got that idea, opening up a coffee shop. Not sure if that's the best idea. Concierge banking is what's really needed. You want to sit down with your banking representative, schedule an appointment, go meet with your concierge. They need a limited number of employees, limited number of space, but you still need environment in some of these banks where you have safety deposit boxes. There's other elements within banking that's still required that people need. Maybe that gets privatized to a different perspective. Who knows what will happen? But from a larger perspective, you're starting to see a lot of this competition, and the brick and mortars are fighting back through the lobbyists. Their lobbyists and their politics can pull back on permissions, and that's where you're starting to see all this, transitional, period with a lot of the digital asset exchanges. My opinion, I don't know, take it for what it's worth. Let me, okay, so let's sidestep here into two other cool things. We're going to sidestep first into satellites because I think satellites are kind of cool. I think tracking satellites with blockchain makes sense, and it opens it up to the general public. If there's people out there that understand how to track satellites and how to plug them into the network, they can dump in as much information as they can. But I think this is really cool. So this was on Thursday, a group called Consensus. They unveiled their Ethereum-based satellite tracker. Now, there's so much space junk floating around, and there's all these things going on. Nobody really knows exactly. I mean, the space agency hopefully knows exactly where all the satellites are, but why shouldn't it be, open record, or at least protected record? I think if the public knew exactly where every satellite was, there's certain satellites you don't want in the blockchain from a security perspective. However, a lot of the governments and the rogue operatives probably already know where these satellites are. But being able to utilize an app, being able to track it in the blockchain, being able to in real time understand the life cycle of that satellite when it comes and goes, I think is really, really cool. There's so many use cases for blockchain. So I like this, and so they're pointing out what the purpose of the Ethereum blockchain is. Obviously, there's others that could do this, but they're preserving data integrity, which is key. Preserving that data integrity is so important, and that's why we're starting to see, blockchain get incorporated into shipping logistics, into pharmaceuticals, into medical space, into, yes, automotive, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. And automotive, I believe Chip talked about automotive before. But this one, there's another organization popping up, and there's so much money being pumped into blockchain right now. That I think that's the other point with what's going on over in China, is that there's just so much movement in this space, and they understand that from a blockchain tech perspective. Where I'm hoping to have the CEO of BlockDrive on the show soon. And BlockDrive is the data-oriented organization that is putting it into a more decentralized framework to store data, because data is everything. And so, being able to track things like this is real life. This is real utility, real world utility. Hey, check that out. Bitcoin soars 42% to 10,500. Biggest daily gain since 2011. Makes you wish you bought a little bit more blockchain Bitcoin before that happened. So, all right, let's bounce over to this next one. This next one I thought was really cool. It's called Mobi. It's dit.mobi. There a lot is going in automotive. Automotive is trying to involve, and this is automotive in the U.S., obviously automotive in Europe with Mercedes and BMW and Volkswagen, and not sure what they're doing over in Korea with Kia and Hyundai and all of that. But I know that in the U.S., big three, big two, because you got Ford, you've got GM, and then Chrysler is owned by Fiat, which is over in Italy. So, but let's call them the big three just for simplicity's sake. But so you got the big three that are also really working towards what is this crap? God, I hate those pop-ups. So the big three working towards incorporating blockchain as much as possible. There were some articles on this, but I really thought, we look at Mobi. What does Mobi really mean? We have this summit coming up here, actually starting tomorrow in Detroit, the Forbes 30 Under 30 Summit, because a lot of them are involved in Mobi. So that's awesome that they're going to be involved there. Look at the community members of Mobi, though. And it kind of gets you to understand, the direction these guys are moving in, and how many of these organizations are automotive based as well. Bosch, BMW, GM, Renault. Obviously, IBM is working behind the scenes. Ford, IOTA with the Internet of Things. We know that IOTA was also involved at one point with BMW, I believe, in some things. VinChain, I believe that this is the one tracking the history of VIN numbers. Honda, I know a lot of these are automotive related tech in some way, shape, or form. R3, part of the community. Let's see here, people that we can recognize. New Cipher, Cube, Hyperledger, Blockchain. I'm trying to find more automotive. Here's another one, Carblock. I don't know who they are. Dash Ride, ShareRing. There's all these interesting things that are popping up in this space. Here's Hyundai. So Hyundai's involved with them as well. And we don't need to look at media, but really, really cool, because of what's happening, within this space, and what Mobi really wants to be able to do, from many different perspectives, how they're getting involved in this industry, and so there's so much to be done. You think about it, from a movement space. If you think about, hey, let's check this real quick. Our best stable coin ever, hovering here at 29.89. It's up 7% for the day. Let's see, it went up by 0.0213. So, but automotive, when we're looking at digital asset, it's so important to look at real world utility of blockchain, full real world utility of how the cryptocurrency digital asset interacts with everything. Also so key. And so we're seeing, again, when we talked about all these other areas of industry that it could be involved in, China sees that also from a blockchain perspective. countries are vying for becoming leaders in the technology. It's not just about the cryptocurrency end of it, even though the cryptocurrency, digital currency aspect is important. It's not the end all be all for the technology. As you'll see with like a block drive, they're existing without digital asset cryptocurrency, still utilizing blockchain for storage of data. Interesting. But then you have like SIA, which uses the SIA coin, which is fully decentralized overall fully decentralized because it's relying on those involved in the SIA coin to also then be processors and storage of data on their nodes. So there's a lot more that goes on. Automotive is such an amazing use case for digital asset, digital currency from a payment perspective, tolls, paying cars. Let's say you want a priority in traffic and you're willing to pay for that priority, and you get into an automation mode where cars could then, the cars are communicating with each other and they're able to move and transition, process being, really based on how much you're willing to pay. Not just, I'm willing to pay the toll, like down in South Florida, you can get on I-95 and you go into the fast lane, or the toll lane, I should say, which is completely separate from the regular part of I-95 as you head south to Miami. But you're paying for that, and sometimes it could be as much as, $7, $8. I think go up to $10 to utilize the lane. The other day I was driving, it was $5 just to drive, 30 minutes to get out of traffic. But that's how bad traffic is. But now imagine in a blockchain environment where in that blockchain environment, you're able to then, pay in micropayment other cars to let you in front of them. And so imagine what the value of that would be. It's interesting. I mean, you start thinking about all these different use cases of automotive. Parking is another one. Forget about it. You park, the car knows you're parked. It immediately starts paying the parking provider. You don't need to go on an app. You don't have to do anything. It's just automatic. It's doing it in micropayments. You're going to pay for the time that you're there. When you leave, it's all good. There's just so much going on, that it's enormous. The blockchain space needs to be incorporated with the digital asset space. This is the direction we're going in. China knows it. Switzerland knows it. Malta knows it. Bermuda knows it. Singapore knows it. Thailand knows it. France knows it. There's so many countries in the world that have created environments to foster development and growth in this space. The U.S. dragging their feet because they'd rather, work on other things. Yet technology is still growing up here, but there's still hurdles to overcome in the U.S. market. Hopefully, they get their act together and we start moving forward positively. David D says Portugal. Let me go to the chat for just a minute. And then we're going to wrap it up here. But I think you guys, definitely brought up some great stuff here. David D. Yeah, I mentioned Moby because he and Moby, the performer, share. That's right. How many times did I say Moby? I should have said Moby, a few more times. And it wasn't just about the website. I was thinking about that. I said, you know what? I wonder if Moby exists as a platform. Let me look and see if anyone's used that name yet. And then I stumbled on it. That was kind of crazy. Spanish Fly said Ven is now VET, which is the V chain, I believe, right? VET is the new V chain. V chain is up 10%. Man, V chain is the supply chain. They're on there. Yep, it's crazy. So much going on in there. Let me see. I'm so far up here. Steven Ship says, I'm still shocked how many people still go through toll booths instead of using a Sun Pass. I have no idea why people... I don't know, and I thought they got rid of the money part too. I didn't even know you could still pay at the toll. I thought that when you go through the toll, it just takes a picture of your license plate and bills you somehow. I didn't even know you could still throw money in there. It's even worse when you get, if you're not paying attention, you get stuck behind someone, or someone drives into the toll lane. And now you don't even need to slow down. There's areas where they just put it up above you. Boom, you're just paying money. Just like that's how it is in the toll lanes on 95. Boom, they're just taking your money. You don't know, and you can use it for parking and all these other things. But it makes more sense
that why should SunPass, be in control of that, all the time, when really, you have to sign up for SunPass, and you got to sign up for Coil, and then you got to sign up for this or this one. Then I want a subscription over here. I got to sign up over there. And then I got to sign up over here. I've got 1,000 subscriptions. Everybody debiting money off my credit card. How the hell do you keep track of all of that? I just want one source. I just want to be able to put it in one time and everybody use that platform. And it just makes sense. And let that platform figure out who gets paid and how they get paid in micropayments. That's the direction of blockchain. That's where we're going. That's why this place is exciting. And that's why, we're here on the chain with the Hodl Review live. And that's why you guys are going to keep coming back, and you guys are going to check out On The Chain. Go to onthechain.io. Go check out our other great content creators. Go check out the video from Crypto Eddie. She did a great video on the FUD of XRP from 2015 to 2019. You guys got to go and watch that video. It's awesome. Go check out Blockchain Monkeys. He dropped an amazing video on VeChain. Go check out Chip. We've got other content creators are behind the scenes with ideas. They're getting ready to put out their video content. It's going to be amazing. Everything's going to be right here on the chain. I look forward to seeing you guys on the next stream, and I'll also check you out on some short videos coming up this week. Until then,